Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Are you a politician, a prosecutor, or a preacher? Hey everybody, Joe Simons, like diamonds, back again. Salt Strong Unchurched. I'm pumped to be back in 2026. Thanks to all of you who emailed, texted, reached out, asking about Unchurched and what happened in the beginning of the year. I did take a little sabbatical, if you will. And a lot of these are recorded a little bit in advance. And I even have to submit them in advance, so I'm not actually recording them, on Sunday mornings anymore. I did way back in the day, but these are all kind of done. Let's just say a week ahead of time in general. By time they get submitted, recorded, and kind of edited, because I will have a guy go through and just take out any long breaks. Or if there's any areas where the mic gets too hot, etc. So just know that I did take a little time off there during the holidays, and it was really good. I had a blast, just kind of unwinding, unplugging. We went up to Georgia 2 different times over Christmas and New Year's, and it was just good. We're in an area up there in the farmhouse with no TV, no Wi-Fi, just everyone's outside enjoying the nice Georgia weather and seeing the change of leaves, because we don't really get to see that so much here in Central Florida. But anyhow, great time, and just thank you again for everyone who checked in on me. I also did a lot of reading, which ties into this podcast. And I will probably the next couple of podcasts, I'll be doing some updates on some books I read. And someone had recommended this book, Think Again by Adam Grant. It's a top-selling book called Think Again, Adam Grant. Highly recommend it. And in general, he is encouraging us and backs it up with science to rethink, and talks about one of the biggest issues we face today. This is a very new book, meaning it's very relative to what we're all seeing in our lives with social media, the news, politics, etc. And he's like, it seems like right now we've all become not dumb, but a little dumber perhaps, where we just believe everything that we see. There's all this fake news on both sides, both the left and the right, and we tend to just read what we want to read and believe what we want to believe, as long as it ties in with our thoughts, our beliefs, our ideas. And, one of the biggest risks we have is getting stuck on an idea or a thought without ever taking a step back to say, is this 100% right? Maybe I am wrong here. And he's like, that was something that occurred back in the day when we could have healthy discussions about politics and religion and God. And now it's like we can't. It's like the second someone even remotely disagrees with our ideology, we bash them, we throw mud at them, we hate them, we slander them. I mean, it really is crazy. We just get triggered. In general, I'm not talking about you perhaps, but I'm just going to be honest here and throw myself out there. There have been multiple times, even reading this guy's book, where he didn't vote for the same person that I did. How about that? And already, and he even says, you're probably, if you're reading this and I tell you, here's what I believe in general, that he's not as conservative as me, let's just say, that you're probably already discrediting me. And I was, in my head, as I'm reading this guy's book that I'm now talking about, it was a really good book, I was discrediting him because he wasn't a conservative Christian like me. And it was like, what a shame that, he's kind of making fun of himself why I'm reading the book. Because he's like, I know if you already agree with me, cool, you think I'm even better. And if you don't, now that I told you what I believe, you probably already trying to find ways to poke holes in my argument and who I am. And I was. There have been many times where I must lose respect or kind of like almost shut down. I don't get triggered by someone who doesn't believe what I do, but I fall in the same stinking trap. And it hit me as I'm reading this. I was like, man, shame on me. We do need to rethink. And that doesn't mean he's right. It just means I shouldn't have to be that triggered or that angry or discredit someone who has real data just because they happen to mention that they didn't vote for the same person I did. And where we get into trouble is when our ideology, our thoughts are tied to our identity. And because our identity is it. We've, if you've been with me for a while on this podcast, we've talked about that a lot. Even the devil, I mean, when he had the opportunity with Jesus, he literally attacked his identity. It's the first thing, the first encounter that in the Bible that Jesus and the devil have is when the devil starts attacking Jesus's identity, saying, you're not really the Son of God. If you are, then you do this. He just basically started challenging his identity. Thankfully, Jesus did not fall for it. But that's one of the toughest things is when we feel like our identity is being attacked, and if we somehow correlate and really stick our ideas to our identity, that's where our ego gets involved, and that's where a lot of us have our downfall. We feel like we're being attacked, and we just can't be so attached to these sort of ideas. So here's why the title is what it is. So in his book, his thesis essentially, and he goes on to prove this, is that every person in general has one of these three kind of styles when we feel like our identity is being attacked and we're not thinking like a scientist, which is, we'll talk about in a second, that either we're one, a preacher. And so I'll talk about the preacher. A preacher delivers sermons to defend ingrained ideals and express beliefs passionately, often without considering any evidence. So I'll say that again. A preacher is someone who has this idea that's maybe tied to our identity, right? Or maybe we read something, or maybe we just believe something in general for whatever reason, and we become a preacher. We just start delivering these sermons, and you've probably seen people on Facebook that do these crazy long posts to defend these ingrained ideals, and they express all their beliefs very passionately without considering any evidence whatsoever. So that's the preacher. The prosecutor, they're the ones who attack other people's logic. So imagine a prosecutor in a court, they attack other people's logic to prove their own point, and all they do is focus on flaws in the opposing person's ideas. So unlike a preacher who's just being very passionate and delivering all these sermons about their ideals, the prosecutor does the opposite. And you see this in politics all the time. They don't even, you've seen this even in a debate, right? Where someone asks a question, and instead of answering the question, they just bash the other person's, ideas, and basically just focus on all the flaws in the other person's ideas. So that is the prosecutor. And there's a big chunk of people that are like that, especially when they get pushed into a corner in just like in politics, or if someone is up on stage and they feel like they're being challenged because of their ideas, that is what happens. A lot of times we turn to this prosecutor. And the politician, they campaign to sway crowds and gain approval or maintain power rather than seeking the truth. So a politician just sticks with their guns, and they just campaign to sway these crowds and get people pumped on some idea to gain approval and maintain power rather than seeking the truth. So what is the answer? Well, I already kind of foreshadowed it. It's the scientist. That is kind of the ideal style, not a hindering style, which is what he calls the preacher, prosecutor, and politician. Because to think about a scientist, they kind of have like intellectual humility, right? A scientist in general is kind of out there to prove a hypothesis, whether they're wrong or right. And right, I mean, they're just trying to find the answer. They're seeking truth. And, a scientist, I would say, has a lot of curiosity, right? Unlike the prosecutor, the preacher, politician, not very curious. They're just sticking with their guns. Whereas a scientist has a ton of curiosity, asking questions, exploring things that maybe we don't know or don't know enough about. They also have that humility, doubting what you know, and holding some assumptions a little bit looser than just sticking with our guns at all cost. And they're not afraid to experiment, meaning that would, in the big scheme of things on our views, that means updating your views and even some beliefs on new evidence and data. And I just thought that was really insightful, because I believe, and the book points out as well, why we have so much hatred out there is because we've essentially formed into two parties, right? And depending on when you're listening to this, I mean, I'm recording this right after a lot of these ICE issues, and you got like half the country that believes ICE is good, and it doesn't matter where you stand on. I'm just saying what it is. You got half the country that believes it's good, and we're getting rid of convicts and criminals and people that aren't here legally, which does make sense. And you got another half that says it's a horrible thing ever, and are out there ranting and protesting. And there's nothing that you can say to really either party right now to convince the other one that they're right. They're just, everyone's sticking with their guns. And, and that's just one of a million examples of like everything there's something new every week that comes out in the news, and half the side is on one part of the ideology and the other side is on the other half, and everyone hates each other. No one's thinking for themselves. They all just read what they want to read and believe what they want to read. And kind of keep piling it on. And I'm guilty of this as well. Once I believe something, I'm almost kind of looking for more facts or more science-based stuff that will prove my point, instead of taking a more of a holistic approach and listening. And I think, they talk about the greatest generation. That was one thing I always saw in my grandfather in particular. I never saw him get angry. I never saw him, sit there and bash someone or hate on someone. And he had, very stern beliefs, and yet he would just ask questions. And he was like a scientist. He was very curious, and he had a ton of humility. And he would rather get to know your side than try to bash you or hate on you. And I feel like we've lost that, and in not just America, but probably globally. And I think the only way to get back to it, sadly, is some kind of crazy war that unites all of us together somehow. And no different than like what happened with the 9/11. I saw, 9/11, everyone put their flags out, regardless of race, religion, backgrounds, what you thought about ICE. And there wasn't ICE at the time, but it's sad that it takes something really, really bad to unite us, or for us to start thinking like this, to rethink. And sadly, I don't think that will happen on a global stage, just because I don't know, it doesn't even make sense to me how much we've dug ourselves in a hole because of politics and in social media and et cetera, where we're just all taking sides and it just stuck there. Really, really, really tough. But here's the great news. It doesn't mean that you have to be personally, and your personal family doesn't have to be stuck like that. And I believe that this in particular, where I'm going with all this, I feel, and the book paints a really good picture, I highly recommend it, is this hinders your growth big time. If you're never thinking for yourself, and you're always, being either a preacher, prosecutor, or politician, you're not really growing. I mean, scientists in general, people that have a science mindset, they're the ones that are growing. They're getting new knowledge. That's why when you hear someone as a rocket scientist or something, you just assume they have more knowledge, right? That they're smarter, they're wiser. And it's because they are curious. They have the humility, and they experiment with stuff. And they're constantly trying to learn new things. And I feel like in general, we have not gone down that path as a society, where we're just doing the exact opposite, or everyone is, like I said in the very beginning, is the book said, kind of getting dumber a little bit, and just sticking with what we've heard or read out there, or backing some ideology. And I don't know, I just reading this book really got me thinking even about my own thoughts. Like I said, I was sitting there, kind of discrediting this guy just because I found out he didn't believe what I believed. And man, shame on me. And that even goes for religion, right? This is an unchurched podcast. I've been really guilty of that as well, where I find out someone doesn't believe the same thing, or they're an atheist, and I'm like rolling my eyes, like, how dumb can they be? And that doesn't mean I need to go change my mind about what I believe, but maybe I should listen to them. Maybe that is an opportunity for me to hear them out, right? Like I imagine my grandfather doing it. If he found out someone was an atheist, he's not going to say, you idiot. He would say, oh, tell me more. Like, tell me more why you believe that, and how. Like, he would ask really, really good questions and get them talking and earn their trust. And all of a sudden we'll say, hey, well, maybe you should even look at this, or you know what? That reminds me of something I read here in the Bible. And it just opens up the doors to so many great conversations, instead of creating enemies. And, essentially when we do bash someone or knock heads with them, butt heads with them, all it's doing is having them dig in deeper, which is part of this whole problem, right? It's a vicious cycle, right? If we're thinking like either a preacher, a prosecutor, politician, and the other side's doing the same thing, we're basically just digging our heels in even deeper. And that's why I said, I think it's going to be really tough as a society to take our heels out of this dirt and become scientists. The book, it starts off with the story. I probably should have led the podcast with this because it's really fascinating. If you've ever seen the movie Blackberry, have you guys seen that? It's really, really fascinating movie. It's a true story. For any of you who are, I'm going to say 30 years or older, you probably remember Blackberry, the old Palm Pilot and all that stuff that came out way before Apple did, meaning, years before, not decades before, but way before an iPhone. And this guy, Mike Lazaridis, he was considered like a boy genius. The dude had done stuff at like 14 years old that, most 50-year-olds, even in the science field, have never achieved. Like, this kid was literally at a whole different level. And he was the one, Mike Lazaridis was the one who founded and kind of the technological visionary for BlackBerry. I mean, he did something that had never been done before, and it was the hottest thing out there. I mean, analysts and Wall Street, they were projecting BlackBerry, to be the biggest company in the world. I mean, a global powerhouse, literally. And it was huge. It had so much momentum. No one was going to be able to touch them. Everyone who was anyone had a BlackBerry. I mean, that was the thing. I had one. It was awesome at the time until Apple came out. But if you watch the movie, I won't ruin the whole movie for you, but Mike, he was a scientist. And the crazy part is he turned into kind of all three of those things, a preacher, prosecutor, and politician, and forgot what got him to where he was. I mean, he was literally a scientist, and he was an innovator, and he was questioning stuff, and he experimented, and he got so stuck on the BlackBerry being like the perfect thing. And there's a point there where, this is all true story, where Steve Jobs is up there introducing the iPhone, and and everyone on his team could see it. They're like, this is a superior product. And he's like, no. And he's literally screaming and preaching, it's not. Everyone wants to be able to touch the button on the phone. That's what they want. He's screaming, literally just, he's kind of being all three, preacher, prosecutor, politician. He's knocking on the other ones. This is stupid, like a prosecutor would, attacking all the stuff. He's like, everyone wants to be able to touch it. And he stuck with that. Had he been a scientist, he could have said, you know what, maybe people do want something like the iPhone. And we literally wouldn't know what an iPhone is had he done that. But instead, he stuck with it. He was so stubborn. He was afraid to change it. He refused to change it. I mean, he had his top people leaving him to go to Apple, to go to other places, because he was so stuck. He dug his heels in so hard that he refused to hear anyone else. And he refused to even rethink, which is the kind of the theme of this podcast, his thoughts, and instead just wanted to maintain that power, maintain and prove his own point, and focus on the flaws and the other thing. And it was really, really painful to watch, and even more so because it was an absolute true story. And of course, the whole thing went down. They filed bankruptcy. Got bought out by someone else, or merged. Really, really sad. But the book talks about that because that is just a really big example of someone who was a scientist and then for whatever reason got caught up in their ideology and stopped experimenting, stopped having humility, stopped having curiosity, and just went down the complete wrong path of getting stuck on their thing. And it cost them billions and billions of dollars. I mean, really, really, really fascinating. So to kind of wrap and sum all of this up, I personally, as I always share at the end of these, I kind of put a challenge out there. I would challenge you to think more like a scientist. Anytime that you feel that anger kind of coming up or maybe really coming up where you're ticked off, you're wanting to just sit there and lash out at someone because of their different thoughts, or if you're getting fired up or discrediting someone because of their beliefs, instead of just getting fired up and bashing them and becoming one of those three mindsets that kind of hinder you, become more like a scientist. Like I'm going to use my grandfather. Ask questions. Oh, cool. Like how do you? I don't really necessarily believe that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you got there. That's what a scientist would do, right? Hey, like I found something different, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. How did you get there? How did you come to that? Where's the proof? And when you do that, it's amazing the conversations that happen, the friendships that can even open up. To me, it's where the magic happens. And yet, sadly, we've become a society that just wants to stick with our stuff, and we dig our heels in, and we become politicians and preachers and prosecutors and just bash anyone who doesn't believe what we believe, even with all the fake news out there. I've had some friends out there that, have read something and they come to me and and I was like, that's not even real. And they're like, yeah, it is. And it's like, well, Google it. Like, Google, is this real? And I was, it turns out that was a fake piece of news just to get people fired up. So that's, once again, being a scientist, where scientists would stop and Google or go to ChatGPT and say, hey, is this real? Show me the proof behind this before I go get animated and angry and want to share this all over the world. So that is my challenge to all of us, is to be a little bit more patient, a little bit more humility, right? As a scientist would probably be defined as someone who's got intellectual humility, where they're not out to prove themselves right. They're out there to find the truth, to seek the truth, regardless of what side you're on. So love you guys. If you had any key insights here or anything that's helped you out with this, love to hear from you, or any other thoughts, prayer requests, etc. Joe@saltstrong.com is my private email, Joe@saltstrong.com. Otherwise, I will talk to you on the next episode.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.